Hey guys, my name is Robert Raphael, and this is Fireside Havoc Episode 2, guest starring Eli Fisher. Today's episode features WellWalker, a melodic hardcore band out of Portland, Oregon. This is their song The Misgiving off of their EP Old World Blues. Alrighty. So, I recently starting this podcast, I discussed how I wanted to do a format of just snippets of songs, basically, to tease the band, get you guys interested in it. But I highly suggest that you check out WellWalker's page that I've linked in the description. Not really a band to just take 30 seconds at a time or 45 seconds at a time. Really, really just need to take it as a whole. Eli, you discussed this with me the other day and you had the argument about the format, and you discussed specifically this kind of music can't be taken as 30-second snippets.
It can't. The music's all about atmosphere. It's not really about the regular verse, chorus, verse. It's all about the long build-up. I hear a lot of influence from bands like Neurosis and ISIS, bands who started out in the hardcore punk scene and then basically created their own genre of post-metal, and that's what I hear a lot in WellWalker.
Yeah, as a person who's been following a lot of iterations of band members from this band, just overall, each song is a whole lot of fun. It's not basically, you're not going to really expect what you're going to hear out of it. It's like, oh, this is a really soft melodic song. Then all of a sudden it picked up. I actually was kind of kicking myself. I was fading that out because it was just starting to pick up again, and it was the next wave, as you said, the next ebbs and flow. that was a good one. But you know what I mean.
We both highly implore you check these guys out.
Yeah, absolutely. Big fan of the lyrical content. It's not generic. You're not going to find it in radio rock or anything like that. It's a lot of really deep lyrics. At least I find really deep lyrics. You can relate to them, and they tell kind of a cool cryptic story, and something I really enjoyed. So today's topic is music and the nostalgia factor. This is something that basically all of my musical taste comes from. I love feeling 16 years old again, even though I'm only 28. But I actually was seeing some postings from some people on Facebook talking about. Someone brought up, if there's a nostalgia factor with books, a nostalgia factor with movies, why isn't there a nostalgia factor with music? And it was all I could not to chime in and just be like, what are you talking about? There's nostalgia factors all the time with music.
It's the biggest thing. It's nostalgia.
Throwback Thursday. There is a day dedicated to a hashtag where you can just throw back music, movies, clothing, or just a picture of you as a kid. But nostalgia, not only with music, but just as a whole, seems to be really important to people, especially people our age. But the main theme with this, or the topic, is music. So focusing on that, it's not like everyone comes out of the womb listening to music.
I did.
Oh, okay.
My sister is 15 years older than I am, and as an infant, she would bring me up into her bedroom and I think Master of Puppets had just came out on cassette, and she would sit me up there and have me listen to Metallica, while my parents just worried so much about how I would turn out.
And Master of Puppets said, hey man, you know, I'm a big fan of Metallica. Not huge, not as big as everybody else. Growing up, my brother is 7 years older than me, and I got a lot of my musical taste from him. I remember my first few CDs I actually got were Boyz II Men, the Aladdin soundtrack, and Gloria Stefan. It was basically in the bargain bin at a Goodwill. My mom grabbed those. But I would always sneak to my brother's room, and he had he had a bunch of Jay-Z albums that I would take. DMX, was it Flesh of My Flesh or Blood of My... The one where he's covered in blood on the album cover. It's all white except for him covered in blood. There you go. He had a Cake album, and basically, I got, like I said, a lot of influence from him. I would go to daycare when I was like 7, 8 years old, and while everyone's watching Barney or Power Rangers or something like that and singing Barney songs at lunchtime, I'm singing Weezer. Like, everyone's sitting there singing, like, oh, I love you. And I'm like, what's the matter, what's the matter, what's the matter, you? What's the matter, babe? I'm feeling blue. And they're like, what are you talking about? And I was like, yeah, I'll don't know. But from there, I really started to get in. I was really into hip-hop and stuff like that. Real big fan of 90s hip-hop. The Family with, I am spacing on the name, with Biggie and Puff Daddy, and it's not going off so well. I promised everyone this one would be better. But you know what I mean. So it was a lot of weird influence in that way, and actually not a whole lot of metal influence.
Well, 90s was a huge time for hip-hop. They were these stars, I mean, rock and metal were famous. Not like, they're not now. But hip-hop and rap took its own stage in the 90s.
Yeah, they were everywhere. I mean, you couldn't... I remember watching Saturday Night Live in... had to be 98, because that's when the movie came out. But Puff Daddy was the musical guest on Saturday Night Live singing Come With Me. You know, that song that rips off Jimmy Page. Well, Jimmy Page actually played the guitar on that album with the... so, I guess it's not much of a rip-off if you got the main guy to actually do it. So, your sister got you into Metallica, but where did your musical taste go from there? Because I know you're into a lot of interesting things.
I don't remember it. I was an infant at that time. That was just continuing up what you were saying before. Mm-hmm. But growing up, my parents, I listened to a lot of Beatles. That was my favorite band for years. But I listened to a lot of classical, like, singer-songwriters, folk writers.
I listened to a lot of Chicago.
See, we didn't... it was a non-Chicago house we grew up in. My dad would take us to go see Bob Dylan or Van Morrison. Mm-hmm. And Grateful Dead. I don't remember that, though. I was too young. But I basically, up until I got into 90s hip-hop, that's what I listened to.
I say 2001 by Dr. Dre is what completely changed my opinion of hip-hop. I like Tupac, but Tupac had been dead by then, and Biggie was dead. Jay-Z wasn't cool at that time as much, so I stopped listening to him. And then...
it was Forgot About Dre when that first came on the radio.
It still to this day, one of my all-time favorite albums. I think it's my number one favorite hip-hop album. And then from there... Actually, you gave me my first Eminem tape. I think it was for my 11th birthday, 10th birthday.
Was that the Slim Shady LP?
Yeah. And that immediately got taken away from me by my dad as soon as I got back in the car, and he gave it to my brother, who ended up giving it back to me about 3 years later. Or so. Something like that.
And it's funny when we speak of nostalgia, because I'll touch on this more, but I'm more of a metalhead. Like, I like rock. in general.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of nostalgia, I think the biggest for me is 90s hip hop, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, as long as it's like a song that I immediately recall. And that's the thing with me in nostalgia, is it can't just be something old. It can't just be something from when I was a kid. It has to have some kind of a feeling or a memory tied to it. And so, like that entire Slim Shady LP just reminds me of hanging out in grade school, going off into middle school, all that stuff. The 2001 album just reminds me of end of middle school in the summer. And so, with a lot of people, I guess it's recalling things from your past. I guess that is kind of nostalgia. That is the definition. But for me, it's a little bit more specific than just, oh, it's over 10 years old or it's 20 years
It brings
old.
back certain moments in your life or
Yeah,
certain emotions.
A good feeling.
Yeah. Or bad, depending on the song.
Well, and that's another big dividing point between you and I, is that the summer of when I turned 12 years old is when I got into Blink-182 in a big, big way. Blink-182 automatically reminds me of camping and just riding my bike and swimming in the lake and just having a good old time about all that stuff. And it kind of shaped from there just, growing up in Oregon, summer is really the only time that we have to actually do anything. You get 3 months of a time frame to do anything.
If that.
Yeah, exactly. So you can get till July before you actually have good weather. And so for me, pop punk, Blink-182, Newfound Glory, Sum 41, bands like that just really, especially if it on like a cold winter day or something like that, I could just listen to and automatically just go back in my head and it's a summer day and I'm hanging out on the beach. We're going camping, having a good time. But with you, your nostalgia factors are different. What about those?
It's funny because I thought once you brought up the topic several days ago, I got to thinking and about the nostalgia factor with my growing up with, especially transferring into the metal genre. I'll refer to the ones I have the most nostalgia for. Are gateway bands that bridge the gap to other styles or genre of metal, whether they got heavier. Because I was younger, I remember because I think it was just the end of 7th grade. I went to a concert, a rock fest, and Stone Temple Pilots was headlining, and I really wanted to see them. And then Slipknot came out. It was their first album, their first tour, and I got destroyed. A 7th grader in the mosh pit. But it changed me completely. I don't know what the hell my dad was thinking by getting me that album. And,
Considering you and I met at a Catholic school.
Yes.
Very, very strict Catholic school.
And so Metallica was my first band that it was like rock, thrash metal. But Slipknot really took me to a more extreme level, where it's the exact opposite of where you went. Mm-hmm. But I would say, because when I think back into a lot of the bands I listened to at that age, I laugh, because I think most of them are childish or, not good quality. And I think the one band for me that has the most nostalgia for rock or metal wise, I didn't discover until a little later. I think I was a junior in high school is when I first heard Opeth and their album Blackwater Park, and that really changed how I listened to rock and metal. And so more if I hear a song that's filled with nostalgia for me, good nostalgia, I'll say, it's those gateway bands.
Okay, that makes sense.
And I also have bad nostalgia. If I'm driving and I hear Break Stuff by Limp Bizkit.
So is it bad nostalgia in the fact that it's a song that maybe you liked as a kid and now you know you shouldn't like it?
Oh, yeah.
Or
definitely.
do you mean bad nostalgia, like it reminds you of a bad time?
No, it's a shitty song that I loved growing up. Because that album came out when we were in Catholic school, and so especially being in such a repressed area, and then being able to walk to the bus stop listening to break stuff, Nookie, listening to Kid Rock.
You got me into Kid Rock and Offspring. So, so from there, actually my pathway into the music that I listen to now is a little bit more obscure. I was really into pop punk and hip hop when I was in middle school and in high school. Then I met a group of kids that were in metal bands and punk bands, and I started to go to their shows. Then I started to seek out music like theirs, and from there I really got into, I guess it was a combination of what I would call metalcore and like, I don't really know what you would call Silverstein. Bands like Silverstein or Senses Fail, kind of like the emo.
Let's just call them core.
Yeah, a core. Well, I don't know genres, but basically, yeah. So I had this weird conglomerate where I would listen to Blink-182 and New Found Glory. They've always been big stepping stones for me, and they've always been there. Sure, they always will be. But then I was getting into bands. Like It Dies Today was one of my favorite bands. Despised Icon, love Despised Icon, and then I would get into, but at the same time I was getting into Silverstein. I bought Hawthorne Heights' first album, Census Fail's Let It Enfold You, another great album that I still love to this day, and I believe because I was hanging out with so many different people in different bands and being exposed to so much music all the time, I felt really fortunate because I could just kind of branch out from there. The one genre that I refused to get involved with was country. But that was until senior year of high school. I remember I heard Rascal Flatts, Broken Road, and Dierks Bentley, he Settle for a Slowdown. And that's when I realized, as a person who really enjoys good stories and story-like lyrics, both those songs are really, really heavy lyrically. And I don't mean heavy like metal. I mean like heavy like almost borderline depressing. And I enjoy that kind of stuff. And so I listened to it. I really got into it. It wasn't cool to like country, but I kind of became a closeted country fan. I'd show up with my scene hair and piercings and tight pants and little t-shirts and dance in the pit and stuff but then I'd go home listening to Dierks Bentley and Rascal Flatts along with It Dies Today and practicing my scream for that one day when I would join a band. It never happened though.
We both had that where it wasn't cool to like country. Mm-hmm. It was very much hated on, and I think I hated it much longer than you did.
Well, to be honest,
yeah,
you're a fan of true country.
Yes.
I am a fan of pop country. I do like true country, but I'm not exposed to it enough to actually be like, other than like Conway Twitty.
Yeah.
But, I like listening to Miranda Lambert. Kinda. Actually, that's not true. I liked 3 of her songs on one album, and I bought that album. But actually, Casey Musgraves is someone who I really got into. I think that was the first country artist I really got into. It's almost folksy, Mm-hmm. She's got that pop voice, but she's also got the steel guitars. She's got the, really methodical lyrics and stuff like that. I watched an interview with her, though, and they were talking, what's your recording process? And she's like, get high, listen to Tupac, and then I go in there and I record. And I was like, well, that's kind of weird, considering if you've ever listened to her music, it's all real mellow.
Yeah.
But, from there, I just, I kind of reeled back after Meshuggah came into the to the scene. I remember my buddy Phil brought me into his truck and he was like, "Hey, I'm gonna start playing riffs like this," and it was Meshuggah, and I was just sitting there staring at the console,
Was it the Bleed song?
It was that one song that I always play. And that's when I was like, you know what? I think it's time to reel back. I think it's time to get back to your pop punk roots and start getting into that. And as the trends died and as I grew up and got out of the scene, I really do still gravitate now towards stuff that I listened to then. I always am seeking out new music, but if you look on my iTunes, I have Finch, What It Is to Burn. That's one of my favorite, pop. It's kind of like a heavier pop, metalcore kinda. It's difficult to explain for me, but I'm a real big fan of Finch, What It Is to Burn. I have the trifecta of Metallica albums, Injustice for All, Master of Puppets, and
which one are you thinking of?
And Ride the Lightning. There we go. And then I need that cup of coffee.
It's like I'll visit those like how you're saying you have those albums from your past
but I can't tell you how much I don't play Metallica.
Me too. They're my favorite band forever, but I don't. That's the thing with when I talk about the nostalgia with rock for me.
Mm-hmm.
There's very few bands that I continuously go back to, like System of a Down. I can always listen to them. They're still fantastic to this day. Nobody sounds like them.
No, they're absolutely great. Steel's album always brings me back to sophomore year. But when you have a rough day, or if you're just feeling off and new music's just not doing it, and you put on something from your past, what's your go-to?
Depends on what kind of a bad day I have.
Mm-hmm.
And generally my mood, because the artist could change way much. That's not a real sentence. But like I said before, O Past Blackwater Park, that actually helped me get out of a really dark time.
Mm-hmm.
And those are messed up lyrics in there. Those are dark, deep lyrics. But Scale the Summit.
Mm-hmm.
They're an instrumental band, and they really base their sound off of nature. And they're metal, but they're soft too, and that's always very calming for me to listen to them.
I just found Scale the Summit about a year and a half ago. How long have they been around?
I think they have 5 albums out.
Yeah.
So they've been around a while.
Probably about 10 years.
Probably. I don't know for sure.
Just estimate 2 years in between.
But in certain, growing up, I used to fall asleep with music playing.
Mm-hmm.
And I would always have metal playing. It just calmed me. Or the little older I got back into Alice in Chains.
Mm-hmm.
And their dark, depressing lyrics always calmed me down.
When you're really feeling like a heroin junkie, but you just don't want to try to use the heroin.
But that's how it's always been. I always gravitated towards the darker side of music. And
we all went through our emo phase.
Because, because I never got into punk. I never have. I do enjoy Blink-182. And there are a few pop punk songs I enjoy. But for the vast majority, it's just not my thing. And maybe it's how I feel, plus that's what my brother listened to.
So there's a little bit of sibling rivalry, even what you choose?
Yeah, because, I was listening to Metallica, he's all, fuck Metallica, and, blah, blah, blah. But, yeah.
I always find myself going back to, I don't traditionally go back to, really young, unless I'm in a particularly 90s mood, which is whenever it happens to come on the radio, whether it's... Or was it Fiona Apple? I was singing along to the other day. But whenever I go back, I always find myself returning to, sophomore to junior year of high school when I was truly just having a ton of fun. Every day was fun. I loved high school. I liked going to my classes. I loved hanging out with my friends, and I loved just talking about music and a bunch of stuff. Like I said, Finch, I'd go back to that a whole lot. Blink-182 for sure. But even like if Hawthorne Heights was to come on, what's Ohio was for Lovers, I will belt that song out, and it actually makes me happy, even though I'm not a fan of Hawthorne Heights. Going back and listening to that album, if you look at it like musically, it's really like they were just riding the coattails of like post Good Charlotte, but like there seemed to be a lot of those kind of like emo metalcore bands that were coming out, and
more than a lot.
It was like a crazy amount. But with like Silverstein, Hawthorne Heights, stuff like that. But when I go back and I hear a song from that album, or like a song from a Silverstein album, actually I'll go back and listen to Discovering the Waterfront, and I still like that. Even though it's a super depressing album, it makes me feel happy because it just reminds me of that time. I'll go back and listen to Phoenix TX, Less Than Jake. These are not emo bands, by the way. I don't know if you know these bands. Like Less Than Jake's a ska band.
I know the names,
yeah,
but I've never listened to them.
Phoenix TX, I believe they're like best friends with either Newfound Glory or Blink-182. So again, just a lot of like summertime pop punk and stuff like that. And I find it does the trick every time. I mean, try not to smile when you hear Brick by Ben Folds come on. That song's about abortion, but it makes you feel happy because it reminds you of better times, when you were younger and you didn't have as much stress or anything like that. So, in that same vein, and I don't mean...
abortions?
No. I don't mean like... Okay, so... Blink-182 just came out with a new album. It was their first album without Tom DeLonge, and it was a real messy breakup. And I'm not going to go through the history of that because I'm sure anyone who listens to this either doesn't care or already knows it.
Yes.
Because it's old news. But their new album came out, California, and I've been super stoked on it for a long time, just hearing little snippets. Their single... What was the single called?
Was it Wishing Well? No. Is that an older song?
Yeah, it's an older song. Anyway, so their first single came out, and it was really catchy. More catchy than
it should have been, probably.
Like, people that I didn't expect to like this song were like, it's a catchy song, I like this song. But it was really cool for me when I actually purchased the album. I went through it. First listen through, wasn't all that jazzed about it. Like, I wasn't bummed, but I wasn't as excited about it as I thought. This single definitely carries more weight than the rest of the album. And in the first listen through, I was probably a little too hard on it because my affiliation with California, and there is 3 songs, California, Los Angeles, and San Diego, that are on there, and they were just giving me the Red Hot Chili Pepper treatment. I was just like, enough with California. Move on. But going back and listening to it, regardless what they went through, Tom DeLonge is sorely missed on this album. And Mike Skiba, though, he does a good job as, a filler, but not as a replacement.
Yes.
The songs are great. I think it is a fantastic mashup between their self-titled album, the one that had with Feeling This,
yes.
and so that came out in, I think, 2003. And then if you were to mix Plus 44 with that. So basically, I actually think this album would have been more well received initially by me and other people if it came out as a Plus 44 album and not a Blink-182 album. Plus 44, for those of you who don't know, is it's Mark and Travis, the drummer and the bass player, and they had... I don't know the other band members in Plus 44, but they weren't really prominent. They were kind of just there to play instruments. But
they were fillers.
Yes, basically. Exactly. But bringing in Skiba, it's a twist on a sound that is familiar, but it is not Blink-182. I mean, the lyrical content, yeah, it is. There's that, Build a Pool song,
That's the greatest song on the album, I
And
think.
Bohemian Rhapsody, I think, made me smile the biggest, just because of how it starts, the name of it, the entire thing. It was just it's fantastic. I don't want to ruin anything for anybody, so if you haven't checked out the album, definitely check out Why I Built This Pool and Bohemian Rhapsody first, right off the bat.
It's a good album, and this is coming from somebody who does not like pop punk. It's a good album.
I appreciate that. Along with Blink-182, Newfound Glory came out with a new album about 2 years ago, and as it's old, I'm not going to put too much time on it. It's goddamn amazing. It's fantastic. If you're a fan of Newfound Glory, you will be a fan of that album. It's just wonderful. And the biggest surprising news to me after the Blink-182 release, after I found out it was coming out so quickly and stuff like that, I want to say it was just a couple days after the album dropped, Sum 41 released a music video for a single. I thought the band was dead, and not only did they release new music, but their guitar player, is a very, very beloved guitar player. I can't think of his name right now. I mean, I can look it up real quick. But he's back. He rejoined the band. They released new music, and Derek, the lead singer of Sum 41, was knocking on death's door not that long ago with extreme liver complications due to alcohol abuse. So when I saw him come back, he looks great. A little older, but he still looks great. The music's fantastic. The video's hilarious. It's just a big spoof on just social media and media today. It's a lot of Kim Kardashians and rainbow cats, and that's the rainbow cats. I was like the Pop-Tart one, you know. But other than that, I mean, my taste is being awarded right now, or rewarded with a whole lot of my old bands coming back together or continuing to make music with guitar player Dave Baksh of Sum 41. And I kind of feel that you don't really see that trend in metal. You don't see that trend a lot in many other musical genres, unless it's some kind of comeback tour like Garth Brooks. He has this big tour that he was just having. I think he was out of the game. No, he was here not that long ago. He was in Arizona about a year ago, but from my understanding, it was like a 10-year hiatus. So, is there anything in your genres or in your musical taste that your bands are still producing after all these years that you get stoked on? Or is it just bands from the last 5 years?
So, there are certain bands that I get excited about when I hear they're coming out with a new album because they continuously adapt and change and grow. They never stagnate. Let's see, like earlier this year when that Scale the Summit album came out.
Fantastic album.
I was literally like an excited teenage girl screaming when I got that album.
Not the best gym listening music.
No.
But I would still listen to it at the gym.
Another instrumentalist that has always progressed and changes, another instrumental guy is Angel Vivaldi, who you know as well. He's a guitar virtuoso. He's extremely talented.
He's got like 15 fingers.
Yes.
He's a magician.
I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but Opeth, a band that started off as a progressive death metal, black metal folk project, has slowly changed each album, and now they're like a 70s progressive rock band that don't do any metal aspects to them.
Acid rock.
And I love it. It's fantastic. If Tool ever releases another album, I will be first in line for that. I've always loved Tool and the way they grow as musicians. And I think that's a lot of why the nostalgia factor is hard for me with metal, is because a lot of the bands I listened to when I was younger stagnated. They kept producing the same sound, the same stuff, over and over and over and over again, or just got worse as time went on. And so I just kind of throw that band away. Like, I know you and I disagree, but the first Mudvayne album, I think, is fantastic. And they just slowly got worse and worse, and I just write them off completely.
I don't know if I can disagree with you about that. I've only ever heard about one, maybe two Mudvayne songs. And they just weren't for me off the bat. So,
let's see.
I can't say they got any better or any worse. They're kind of like Slipknot to me, where and I know it's silly, but I just got put off by the gimmick. It's the same reason why I never got into Marilyn Manson. The band Locust, they would go up there dressed in costumes. You don't see their faces. And I think that's kind of the thing that I like about bands, especially live music, is it feels more personal, you know? And so when you kind of remove that element, you're removing something that I enjoy, and so therefore a barrier gets put up. What's that EDM group with the motorcycle helmets?
Oh, Daft Punk.
Daft Punk.
I love Daft Punk.
I like their beats, but I just, oddly enough, I was like, what do they look like? Who are they in masks? Because I like connecting on that level. I mean, I know that's kind of weird, but I always like putting a face to a voice.
And like with Slipknot, since he became unmasked, now it's, what does Corey Taylor think? On everything, on any metal website.
I had never heard of Corey Taylor until he started...
jabbering?
No. I was going to say...
Answering questions.
His band, his second band.
Oh, Stone Sour.
Stone Sour. Because I think that was kind of the point. Was that they were not an individual, they were a band.
Yes.
And that they would... It's all of them or none of them. But as soon as you step out of that light, you take off your mask, you're going to kind of segregate the rest of the guys. I mean, is the Keg drummer going to be able to pull off his mask and have the same kind of recognition? Absolutely not. Maybe the drummer. I'd say the drummer, probably the bass player, because nu metal fans...
Dead.
No, he's dead. Never mind. To complete that thought, I was going to say because nu metal loves their bass players.
I will say this on the defense of Slipknot, because they were my first venture into... when it came out, I considered it extreme. And now I just consider it like just high energy, chaos. But the first two albums I hardly ever listened to. It's their third album, which the song you know and enjoy, Before I Forget, is on.
I was going to say Duality.
Duality's also on there.
Mm-hmm. Those are the two songs I like.
That's a fantastic album. They've never topped it, in my opinion.
They've always been a band that has always had high praises in the circles that I was part of. But it was just... I don't know. I ruled them out. I judged a book by their cover, Eli. And I know you're not supposed to do that. But unfortunately, I did. Moving on from Slipknot. So, given the fact that nostalgia is such a popular thing with people of our generation or around our age, you start to see a lot of trends coming back. You know, there was the whack phase when I was still in high school. Everyone was wearing neon colors, big sunglasses, and looked like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And then, you know, just from there, it's like they always say, trends always come back. I feel that there is a bit of 80s influence that has been in a lot of music in the last 5-6 years.
I could see that.
Especially in pop, a little bit of hip-hop, but mostly in the pop world. And pop world, honestly, runs the music industry right now. I say pop and country. And so they're the trendsetters. They're the ones who are going to be doing everything. I'd even say more so with pop because if you listen to country on a country radio station, they are completely mimicking that sound. Taylor Swift is a perfect example. She came in, she did the country thing, then the pop country thing, and then pop with twang, and now she's straight pop. And it's almost as if she never changed. It's just she traded in the acoustic guitar and steel guitars for like a computer and Apple loops. And that's nothing against Taylor Swift. You know, either you like her or you don't. She has plenty of songs that I think are catchy as hell, and I enjoy. So that being said, where do you see the current state of music right I know it's a difficult question, but
that is a difficult question. I agree with you. There's pop country that is running the music business right now. Because, I mean, if you listen to the radio, you hear 99% of the rock out there, it's garbage. Just absolute, just scrape off the gutter garbage.
I always like to say that it's not for me. Because for someone out there, it's their favorite song. And I don't want to, shit on people for liking the music that they like. Unless it's Buck Cherry, because there's no excuse to be a fan of Buck Cherry.
It's true.
But a lot of radio rock does sound exactly the same. I have my guilty pleasures, Breaking Benjamin. But other than that, it's kind of just this big blur,
There's no bands have set themselves apart.
It's not like when System of a Down came on the radio and just blew everyone's mind.
Well, it's like when I heard that band Highly Suspect.
Oh, yeah.
And I came home that day, I was like, you gotta listen to this! Because they really separated themselves, and with, I can't really talk about country because I like that old style country, and that's never going to be in outlaw country.
I don't know, man. I think it's going to make a comeback. As a person who listens to country radio stations, it's getting bad. It's getting really bad. It's getting to the point where instead of there'd be 6 or 7 singles that you would hear that you really liked. Now, it's 3 or 4, and I see it quickly becoming more and more integrated into pop to the point where the pendulum's going to have to swing back the other way. I think someone's going to come out and they're going to sound Wheeler Walker Jr. I know he's a comedy act and stuff like that, but that sound,
he's got the outlaw sound,
and that's what people want, and that he's garnering a lot of followers, a lot of listeners. His fans are already exploding, and that album came out 3-4 months ago. No one knew who Wheeler Walker Jr. was.
I didn't at all.
Given it's a fake name, that's not actually his name, but it's a character that he made up. He came out with this album where he's just extremely vulgar, takes the same kind of stories, oh, my girl broke up with me, but instead of a woe's me song where you're talking about sitting on your truck drinking Bud Light, the song's called Fuck You Bitch. And and I don't mean that, for shock value or anything, but it's the fact that he just doesn't care. He is so fed up with where country's going that the pendulum has swung the other way. And he's basically the Tenacious D of country right now. But I really see it as a trend that could be changing. I hope so. I think country's going to go back to more twang. The country of the early 90s, I think, is really going to come back in full force.
Because when I first heard Hank Williams III, we won't delve into his later years. That's crazy fucker. But he had the sound of his grandfather and just the old time sound. And yeah, his songs were depressing. That's what country was back then.
Essentially, it was twangy blues. And that's how I saw it.
I mean, he performed at the Grand Ole Opry with his dad as a little child. He was set just to be a star, but the radio execs and the music producers basically told him what kind of music he had to make because of his name. And he said, fuck you. And he could have been so big. And so when you talk about Wheeler Walker Jr., just angry at the state of country music, I think it's because of people like Hank III who got fed up, but he couldn't put his music out on the radio. He couldn't do anything like that, and he runs a farm. That's how he sustains his income.
Another common trait with, not to bring it back to Wheeler Walker Jr., because it's not like he's this amazing artist. He's great at what he does.
He's the
very
second
funny.
coming of Christ.
But the thing is they both, along with Hank Williams, the third, basically walked away from Nashville. because Nashville is like, oh, that's where you get your country artists. They are grown there. You pick them up and then you throw them on a record label. And the trend right now is to not go through Nashville. You're seeing that pick up more and more steam in the country world. I know you don't follow much country, but that's kind of like the discussion right now. Is that Nashville is just pumping out the same old crap. This is early 2000s pop to them. It's all these same. It's all these same record companies releasing artists who they want to be the next Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, 98 Degrees. I can't really think of any more 90s pop bands, but it's something. It's going to be really interesting to see where that goes. Personally, I'm a little excited because I think it'd be really cool to have it go back to that 90s, 80s, dare I say 70s sound.
That'd be awesome.
It'd be fantastic. I'd really like to see pop go back to the days of Matchbox 20. I'd like to see it go back to just, I like Green Day. I know a lot of people hate Green Day right now, but I still like them. But just that 90s, it's just 90s. Just back to the 90s with music. And
when I hear stuff like Pearl Jam, like that gets my nostalgia just shoots through the roof, and I love Pearl Jam.
Mm-hmm.
To me, like them and Soundgarden, stuff like that are like just quintessential sounds of that late grunge movement.
I won't be upset if grunge doesn't come back for a while. Just putting that out there. But I am excited to see where, the music industry will be in 2025. I think it's going to be a much better place. The market's getting so flooded, easily flooded.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It just makes it a little more difficult to find what you're looking for. If you're looking for a needle in a haystack with a chute that's constantly pouring hay down, that's going to make finding what lands in your little special space more difficult to find. And that's why I encourage being more and more open to music, even if you don't like the genre or if you're not a fan of the band, just give them a listen. Give them a try.
That's like how Gene Simmons says it, but a lot of people say it, that rock is dead. Rock has been dead for a while. And on the popular end of the spectrum, yes, I agree full-heartedly.
It's just not being recognized. That's how I see it.
But rock and metal, like I've said this before, it is at the richest stage it has ever been.
I think so.
But it's not being presented to us, so we just assume it's not out there. When I find new bands all the time.
Dude, my world has been blown open. I thought there was this small little hallway with maybe 150 doors that I could open, but behind one of those doors led me to a shopping center of doors. And you're going to giggle. It's because of Ailstorm. Not Hailstorm. Ailstorm, the Scottish pirate metal band, who got me into Finnish metal, folk metal, who got me into bands like Corpiclani.
We could have a whole podcast about folk metal.
We will save that for another podcast. So, after it's all said and done, before I cut this off, what is either something you want to see come out of the music movement or the music industry in the next few years, or a band that comes out with an album that would get you more excited?
Because I'm always finding bands or albums that I love that are coming out every week. But I think the thing that I want to see most is the revolutionization of the rap and hip hop genre.
It needs a big comeback.
It is
badly.
I mean, honestly, like, you can make the coolest beats, doesn't matter. I don't want to go into this. The lyrics are just the worst. I just can't fathom it. And any good hip hop now is strictly underground.
Hip hop, the stuff you're gonna find on the radio, stuff like that. It's real lazy, and I think that's the trend right now. Is the laziness.
And because we here in Phoenix have a hip hop station that will play a lot of 80s and 90s hip hop, and you just listen to that and you listen to the lyrics.
And then you put on Lil Wayne.
It's just garbage.
Unfortunately, that conversation is going to be for another time. We'll get more into hip hop.
Fair enough.
So I'm going to close this one out, but I want to thank everybody for listening. Hopefully this went a bit more smooth than the first one. I know there were still some technical difficulties, maybe a little bit of audio quality difficulties, but you'll be just fine. Trust me. Again, this episode was featured by WellWalker. The song that I played for you guys was The Misgiving off of their EP Old World Blues. I'm going to be linking their Facebook, their Bandcamp, and if they have a music video up, which I'm not sure, I couldn't find one earlier, but it will all be in the description. Give them a check out, please. Listen to it in its entirety. The minute I played you doesn't do it justice. So, Eli, thank you for having this conversation with me.
Thank you for having me.
And we will do it soon. All right, guys. I'll see you later. Ta-ta.